Good morning everyone, Gajan here with another first look for you, and this time it's of the Panasonic S1R. Who is this camera made for? Let's see if we can answer some of those questions in this video. Now, it's been over a decade since Panasonic announced their first single lens mirrorless camera. And with the S1 and S1R, Panasonic is showing that they're willing to throw everything in the kitchen sink at their first full frame solution. But is there enough in here to woo customers over from other brands? Using the new L mount that was made in partnership with Leica and Sigma, Panasonic is really ushering in a new era in digital imaging for themselves. The S1R specifically is the higher resolution big brother to the S1 from Panasonic. This camera can shoot 47 megapixel images. And if it's something that isn't moving and you have it on a tripod, there's even a 187 megapixel high resolution mode. It doesn't stop there. With this device, you're actually able to shoot these 47 megapixel images at up to 9 frames per second, which is quite staggering given how much information the camera is actually capturing. The sensor itself can capture 14-bit RAW files or 12-bit video files. Quite simply, there's a lot of information going into these files. The JPEGs alone come in at 20 megabytes each roughly, and the RAW files for your pictures, well, they're closer to 70 megabytes each. In terms of capturing the content, this camera actually uses the brand new XQD card and an SD card. So you do have 2 memory card slots, each one unique, but it is cool to see that they're adopting the newer technology with XQD. Keep in mind though, with this new XQD alongside SD and the fact that the image sizes can be really big, you may have to reconsider your file management workflows. Now, this camera is heavy. It's a little over 1 kilogram for the body with a battery in it. It's definitely not made for casual street photography. No, this thing was designed for professionals in mind. Picking this thing up, there's a nice deep grip that most DSLR users are accustomed to. And there's a ton of buttons around the camera itself that might terrify you or unlock your creative potential. In my limited use, I actually found this to be quite useful. The ability to customize it to the way I was shooting was really nice. And the attention to detail to have the white balance, ISO, and exposure button at a different texture and different height so you know what you're pressing even when you're not looking at the button, that's really useful. The electronic viewfinder on this thing was stunning. When you look through it, you really see a super high resolution display that refreshes really quickly. It's something that even DSLR users that are coming over will appreciate. Now, it is a pre-production model running pre-production software. So again, this is a first look. I'll save a lot of my thoughts for the upcoming review. But when I look through this display, it did feel like looking at a display. It wasn't really like looking at real life. And it's not a slight, it's just to say that as these EVFs become so high in resolution and the refresh rates, you'll notice that it's really a display in a way that it's not really indicative of the picture that you're taking. So you'll take a picture and it might not have that same sort of brightness and vibrancy that the EVF conveys. The trend of having a top LCD on cameras is something that I can really get behind. Being able to see your settings, what your battery is at, and even your memory card capacity, that's pretty awesome. Now, the only gripe, if I do have one, is I wish that they'd use e-ink displays so you can see these settings even when the camera is off. It's not a huge slight by any means. I'm just saying that the technology is out there and having this would be useful. I said it before, I'll say it again. This was a pre-production model using pre-production software. So again, while I might highlight some concerns I had, be sure to check our full review to see if these things were fixed. There's a ton of features and I'm gonna talk about them packed into this camera, but turning it on, it took a while. It's not something that is meant for really run and gun shooting. You gotta be methodical with it. And Probably not even something that you're gonna turn on and off often. But with respect to battery life and my limited use, I was actually really satisfied and even a little surprised. There's a ton of features here, but leaving this camera on, I was able to use it for the entire day without having to worry about finding a plug to charge it. Here's another thing I can get behind, USB-C charging. So this camera does have USB-C to charge the device and to transfer files, something again that more cameras should adopt. As we move into this USB-C world, there's a lot of creative uses that you can have, especially for shooters that might be traveling with this camera. And I know because of the size and weight of this thing that it's not really conducive for travel photography, but I'm sure there's a lot of you out that are looking at the specs and looking at replacing your current gear with something like this for your travel and landscape needs. The S1R is powered by a Venus engine processor from Panasonic, which basically translates to an amazing user experience. You'll really see the power of this processor when you turn on Panasonic's new artificial intelligence powered intelligent object tracking. There was a lot of words in that press release, but hear me out. Panasonic is actually using deep learning to track objects, both human or animal, intelligently when you use this autofocus system. And when I was using it, I was kind of blown away. It was picking up objects and changing the box around them as that subject moved, both left and right, and even on the Z-axis to the camera and away from the camera. This camera is actually rated to grab focus at -6 stops. With certain lenses, in most scenarios, you're looking at -3 stops. But again, this intelligent tracking was actually keeping up even in dimly lit environments, which was quite impressive. While it didn't seem like the fastest autofocus on the market, I'll save that assessment for the full review. It was still pretty darn fast. My subjects, I asked them to move relatively quickly and even used it on the street, and it grabbed focus really quickly. However, when I was using the face and eye detection, it wasn't as accurate. It seems to be really good at objects in general, but as you try to narrow it down to a face or an eye, it didn't seem as accurate. But that being said, we'll look out for that in our full review. On the video side, the S1R can shoot up to 4K at 60 frames per second and 1080p full HD, in other words, at up to 180 frames per second. And there's a ton more features to be had with this camera, such as the full HDMI port or the image stabilization built in. There's a lot of things that we barely scratched the surface with, and I can't wait to test them out in the shipping product. At the surface, this camera seems to be geared toward professionals. When you look at the size and weight, to the price, to the features to be had, this is not a beginner camera. This is not for someone that's just getting started with photography. Panasonic has thrown all the advancements they could at this thing in the hopes of luring customers from either their Micro Four Thirds solution or other solutions on the market from other brands. Is having all of these features enough to woo over customers from other brands where they've invested a lot into their bodies and lenses? That's the question that I'm going to be looking to answer in our full review coming this spring. But let me know what you think about this camera. Is this enough to win you over? Who do you think this camera is made for? Be sure to leave your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you can keep up with all the great content that we have coming out. Thank you again. Have a good one. See, what I really want to know is, can the artificial intelligence in this camera become sentient and turn into Skynet? That's a feature worth marketing.